start the recording and start our session.
Is this Tammy from Celebrities?
Well,
yes, it is.
Wow, it's all celebrities. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to check out for just a second to see if I can get the video to work and come back on.
okay, I'll give you a minute. Hopefully we'll get somebody else to join us before too long. But in the meantime, Cindy, Will, anything on your mind other than that bear of an assignment for week 4?
No.
Okay. Good to see your video, Cindy. I know it's difficult. Cindy, Tammy, are you there? I see. Well, you've joined us, but
we're back.
Great. Well, welcome back.
Still messing with the video.
Uh-huh. And Mel is with us. Hi, Tammy. Good to see you. Mel, you're with us again. Welcome, welcome. And you are muted.
Thank you.
Okay, so there are 4 students at this time. And wasn't it Mel whose husband was snoring last week? Was that, Mel, was that you?
Yes, it was. Not this go around.
That guy should enter a contest.
I let him watch the video, the portion where he was snoring and he was like, oh wow, really? He didn't know he sounded like that.
Okay, well, it started because it's past 6 o'clock, and if more join us, I will announce them. But I'm glad to have you 4. And in keeping with continuous improvement, I prepared a PowerPoint presentation. Anybody see that?
Yeah, you got it on my other screen.
Yeah, and so that's just kind of keep us on track and have something to memorialize our time together. It's still not a lecture per se. It's still an opportunity for you. Hi, Mel. Good to see your video. An opportunity for you to ask questions, make comments, and whatnot. So hopefully it's somewhat effective for you. And I think, I really like the idea of connecting with students in this manner. And you've had 3 weeks now. Probably there will be something that I'll ask you to fill out, maybe in week 5 rather than the end of week 6, the end of the course, because that's going to be a difficult transition there in week 6. So I may just ask you, what you think, what you got out of participating, because you all have become regulars, and I appreciate that. Hi, Francine. You're muted, and welcome. But I really appreciate your attendance, and really I need your feedback. If this becomes a regular feature of courses, you all are the pioneers. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead with my PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to do something I haven't done before, I think, and that is share my desktop. So, well, here we go. Hopefully you can see this. Is that a yes?
It's loading up right now, sir.
Okay, let me know when you see it.
Yes, I can see it.
I can see it.
I can't yet. Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it.
Great. Well, let's get going. Officially welcome to the week 4 live session. And the objectives for tonight, we're going to talk about who's here, and I am going to take roll because Dr. Brent Duncan, who is the head pioneer of the live sessions, wants to know how many, and I'm not going to divulge names to him. It doesn't matter. He just wants to know how many, basically. And then you'll have your chance to ask questions. We'll go through the week 4 objectives, that week 4 assignment, which is challenging to say the least, and we'll explore anything else you want to talk about. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Am I breaking up much?
Sound good.
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Wait a minute. Who's here? Well, I'm there. I didn't want to. I don't have any photos of you guys, so it wouldn't have done any good for me to try to put any up there. But in any case, it looks like there are 5 students with us at last look. Let me just go back to my. No, somebody else has joined us, I think.
Francine? No, it's just 5.
Francine is okay.
I'm here. I'm here. I just don't. I literally just walked in the door, so my dogs are going nuts.
Okay, that's fine. You are welcome. Anyway, hopefully we'll have more people join us as they can. I know a couple of students have tried to get into the Skype platform and could not. That's an odd noise.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, is that James?
This is James Coley talking to.
Hey,
Yes.
you are welcome, sir.
Hello.
Very glad to have you back, James.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to be here.
Glad you joined us. Okay, we're just starting with who's here, and I've got your names down. Looks like there are 6 students at the moment. And so let's go on. Anybody off the top have any questions that you're burning to discuss? Or not burning? Doesn't matter. No, James? Francine, no?
Yes.
Not at this moment.
Well, my thing, I have I've really enjoyed the dialect and the all of the participation and how everybody interacts. This is like my second online class, and this is by far, especially the team that you put me with, and have made it so easy. Everybody corresponds. We got our project done in a great amount of time. Everybody was collaborating, and I mean, I have no complaints. The work is not hard at all. I mean, it's just
What?
getting it done. So
Are you
I'm
serious?
enjoying this.
Okay, we're going to change everything up. We're going to make no. One thing I learned early on is you don't mess with the syllabus once it's published.
Thanks a lot, James.
I'm really glad you're finding the class worthwhile and the interactions productive, James. Very glad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or other comments? Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
So our objectives, the first objective for week 4, as you can see in the week 4 section of the syllabus, it asks you to differentiate between the basic types of organizational structures. And these are all things we've dealt with all our life. They shouldn't be new, except for perhaps mutual benefit, which is a term to describe things like unions or other organizations that really don't fit the for-profit or not-for-profit profile. And I put down governments with a question mark because I've spent much of my career in government at the federal, state, and local level, all the way from federal down to city. And it is not a nonprofit. It is not a for-profit, obviously, but it's very different. So I put that down there as a category. I won't hold you responsible for that. You won't see it on the final exam. That's more just of a consciousness-raising type of thing. As to these organizational types, do you have any comments or questions? Did they look familiar? Did they?
They look familiar, but why are the government agencies not considered not-for-profit when they don't make profit?
Well, if you learn about the characteristics of not-for-profit or non-profit, It's not that they don't make money. They do. They just don't sell shares in their organization. And their businesses can be many. Political organizations. It's not just charitable organizations. You know, there's political and others that don't sell shares and are not out to generate a profit, but they provide services. In that respect, you know, I can see why someone might make the case that governments are nonprofits or not-for-profits, but I don't know. I think they're very different. And I think the big difference is that they're run by elected officials. And elected officials do things much differently than a CEO or the president of a nonprofit organization, because they've got to curry favor with the voters to stay in office. And that is a huge deal. And then the budget in governments is just about everything. The budget is not simple. It's usually very complex, and it is an expression of the priorities of those elected officials. A nonprofit, you know, it might be, but chances are it's not so grandiose in terms of the complexity of a budget. Also, governments are controlled by different regulations than nonprofits. So I see a number of differences.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In our last week's assignment, we had a little dilemma for me and my teammates, because to you, can there be 2 to 3 different structures within an organization? Because our dilemma was, Shi Chin wanted to know how we were writing about different team structures when there was the talk about the top managers, the owners, CEOs, and management of the company. But when you really break down the NFL, it basically starts with the owners and then trickles down to the players, coaches, then the players, which that's where we started at that level. Do you think there are different structures within organizations like that?
Well, I think there can be. The NFL is kind of a unique organization. It's different, for instance, from Major League Baseball or the NBA in a lot of ways. Commissioner Goodell is not an all-powerful dictator and can't do whatever he wants. It's the owners of those teams who really have most of the power, and they elect the commissioner and pay him an exorbitant salary, but that's neither here nor there. That's just editorializing, and I shouldn't do that. In any case, and I think within the NFL, yeah, there are different organizations. Even within the same team, there are different organizations. I had the opportunity to get to know the father of one of the San Diego Charger girls, one of the cheerleaders. And she's a very gracious young lady. She actually gave me some tickets to go see a game. And the seats are fantastic for those family members, by the way. But their organization is different than the team itself, you know, and they don't get much money at all. You know, these are not millionaires by any means. They're doing it for the exposure to what might be a future career in show business or whatever. So even within, like Chargers football, there is the cheerleaders, the Charger girls that are a different type of organization. They still have to exercise discipline. But yes, sir.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but it seems to me, James raised a good point where you could have completely different teams within the same organization. I'm just thinking back to a sales and marketing team, which was very I don't know, kind of an adhocracy, if you will. But then we had a production side, which was very much a hierarchy, very controlled. I mean, the two teams were culturally, structurally, and the leaders were completely different as well. But yet it was still within a pretty small company. But these two teams operated completely differently.
Yeah.
One dealing with independent self-starters, another one dealing with lower level employees that just did the same thing over and over again.
And I can see that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In my own experience working with city governments, I look at the police and fire service, which is much different than the accounting and accountants or budgeteers. I mean, completely different kind of management, and necessarily so. So yeah, I think you have, very different team structures, team constitutions, team rules, and team organization, which is within the same basic organization. Yes.
And so going back to on your week 4 objectives here, we're differentiating between the basic type of structures. Maybe I'm too focused on structure, the term, because anytime somebody says structure, I think organization, wiring diagram.
Yeah.
And really, because you could have a for-profit and a non-for-profit that look very, very similar. The key differences seem to me just be purpose, funding, and I think that's the big difference between a nonprofit and a government. Government just takes what they need. Nonprofits have to go out and raise it. And that purpose and funding, I think what you generally see is significant culture differences, but there doesn't seem to be any structural need for a difference between a profit and a nonprofit, is there?
There are different regulations that govern the use of donated funds than there is for the use of funds generated through the sale of goods and services. I guess that could be.
But it would not necessarily, there's no structural or organizational differences in the way it's structured. Okay.
Yeah, I can see your point. It's possible for a nonprofit to be able to look much like a for-profit organization with a CEO, an accounting department, or whatever. It may be that the fundraising side is much larger, I don't know, than a sales force. I don't know. I guess I'm just guessing with that. But I look at one of the organizations that has come to unfortunate notoriety in the last several years, and that is Wounded Warriors. That is a nonprofit, and it's a 501c3. Donations are tax deductible. That's not the case with all nonprofits, but that's not my point. For whatever reason, the CEO of Wounded Warriors took it upon himself to spend those donated funds on lavish retreats for top staff at world-class resorts. In other words, nonprofits, generally speaking, are supposed to have kind of a duty to be frugal with the use of the funds that they get, kind of like churches or whatnot. Well, some are and some aren't, and that goes with churches, goes for churches as well. So Wounded Warriors really got some bad press because of their lavish spending, and that CEO is gone, and they've tried to rebuild their reputation since. Usually that is an uphill climb. But that wouldn't happen in a for-profit company. Jack Welch of GE, well, he's not there anymore, but the president of any for-profit company can decide to use the funds they generate from sales for as lavish a retreat as they want, and the stockholders might have something to say, but generally not.
Yeah. Yep.
But see, shouldn't organizational culture, when we talk about that, what you, as far as the, I'm looking at what's going on now in the news where all of these programs, all these companies are folding, and we're finding that there's more embezzlement and more schemes and Ponzi schemes going on.
Oh, yeah.
There should have been, I'm looking at the book, and somebody didn't take these classes that we're taking, because how do does this keep happening? You know.
Well, I gotta say that there is a big element of human nature in that, James. And people, sometimes they're greedy, sometimes they think they can get away with stuff, sometimes their moral compass is not pointing to north, and the examples are many, unfortunately. And so, yeah, I think we're going to continue to hear about those because human nature hasn't changed since the dawn of civilization, I'm afraid. Any other comments about this slide?
So how do they let people just start up these non-profit organizations?
Excuse me, James, could you repeat that?
So how does the government or any entity let these non-profit organizations just start up like this without some type of prudency, you know, following up behind them, seeing if they're legit or, you know, we spend all this money somewhere else. But that's what we're learning now about organizational culture, but it never lists the political side of it. Is that just because it's a long story, or it's just too complicated for somebody else? There should be. There's some government organization that should be monitoring this, right?
Yes, and there
not just the RS. Am I correct?
Well, there is. There are government entities that review what's called the books or the annual reports of any 501c3, which is tax exempt organization, contributions being tax exempt. They've got a whole reporting requirement that they must go through quarterly, annually, and so forth. And there are government bureaucrats who get paid to review those reports and to make findings. And if they find that something's awry or amiss, or there are government accountants that review those books, and if things aren't adding up or they see suspicious patterns of financial activity, they can report those to the FBI and other organizations that can investigate. So people can go to jail for misfeasance and malfeasance as it comes to nonprofits, and there definitely is oversight. Is it as strong as necessary so that nothing dishonest happens? No, sir. No, that's going to happen, I'm afraid. Yes, well.
Just a couple things. With regard to nonprofits, there is a number of organizations that go in and look at their books, and a nonprofit that gets the sort of meets the gold standard as far as accountability and transparency. They're very, very proud of that, and they want to benefit that. And I would just say, James, I understand what you're saying as far as there ought to be an oversight, there ought to be this, you know, in the regulatory environment. And but whatever things are being done at the nonprofit levels are probably tiny compared to the stuff that's happening in the for-profit areas. So, you know, yeah, there's different regulatory agencies, but for example, the SEC, I mean, they hardly ever get anybody on insider trading, and insider trading is huge. I mean, there's big money involved in there. But I must say, this is completely anecdotal based off of my experience. Given, well, at least my somewhat pessimistic view of human nature, it is actually surprising to me how honest businesses in the United States are compared to other places, you know, that I've been. Our system, even without, you know, somebody regulating every single moment of it, it's surprising how well it runs. You know, without as much corruption and graft and bribes and stuff that I've seen otherwise. But I don't know. Would you agree or disagree with that, Professor Baker?
I don't know in terms of numbers. I'm glad to hear what you say. but I don't know in terms of numbers if the United States system for nonprofits is any better than, say, Brazil. Probably it is. I don't know. I haven't seen any statistics.
Specifically, I was thinking specifically for-profit companies.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, well, we've already touched a little bit on some of the issues that go on in overseas dealings in business, where bribery is commonplace in many areas of the world.
Cost of doing business.
And other things that might be considered graft. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, there is a whole body of regulations that require companies and nonprofits to behave in certain ways with the money that they have, especially if, for instance, in the case of a for-profit, it is a public-owned corporation, you know, one that issues stock on the stock exchange. They have all kinds of regulations that they have to meet. So I think it's a little bit harder, but they're human nature. They're going to try to get away with things, especially if they're up against some difficulty. I mean, I see it on TV.
Yeah, and I guess my thinking on this is going back to sort of the culture. Yeah, there's lots of laws and there's lots of regulations, but most employees aren't necessarily thinking in terms of laws and regulations. They're doing what they think is the right thing, and that's why the culture is so important within an organization, because that's really what holds people back. It's the guy that you work with or the gal that you work with saying, hey, that's not right. You can't do that. That's really, it seems to me, one of the more, the potent things that we sort of self-regulate. And when you see organizations that have gotten into big trouble, it's because they have this sort of poisonous culture where, hey, anything goes and whatnot. So anyway, that's just my thought.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about mutual benefit organizations and especially unions, and I just want to throw this out there. Are any of you members of unions now? So you're in a union, Tammy. That's great. And Francine, and you're both my VA staff, right? Yeah. So that's you're in a government union then, right?
Yes, it helps sometimes. Ours is very small. Maine's very rural. Like there's like 2 guys in it. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So, but it is nice to know it's there because it's more national. They'll keep us up to date on things like disclosure, who's getting paid. They'll send us emails from national levels.
That's cool. That's cool. Did you ever read the comment, I think it was from FDR, about how government employees should never belong to unions? I don't know. You want to Google that, go ahead. Anyway, the idea is that as workers, you're working for the United States, and so if you're bargaining, the management is really, you're bargaining against American citizens. I think that was his point. It's
okay for them to try to pass a bill and put their raise on it.
There are sometimes when it's needed.
You mean collective bargaining?
Yeah, I mean, like I think they're beneficial when it comes to if they're being targeted by a manager. I think that it's beneficial when people don't get paid their overtime that they work. So there's times where it becomes useful.
And I would agree. And I think unions are fine. I think, and most of them are very productive and try to be responsive to their membership because that's a dues-paying membership. Sometimes you hear horror stories, but generally speaking, you know, when I say horror stories, I mean an employee who is absolutely dishonest per se, but management must go through the union steward and the union apparatus in order to terminate this employee who richly deserves it, but the union defends him or her. That's their job. I mean, they don't really have a choice. So I say horror stories, but that's their business. it just saddens me some that the way that collective bargaining laws are written is it sets up an adversarial relationship between management and employee rather than a mutual benefit. Now, I've been involved in a number of negotiations with governmental unions at the city level, and fire, police, and industrial workers and so forth. And almost all the collective bargaining agreements talk about doing things for the mutual benefit of the citizenry and for the employees. And we hope that's the case. But human nature, again, sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. But unions are very interesting organizations.
We've had actual factories closed down in Maine due to a breakdown in negotiations between what the union is pushing through, and probably it could be maybe only 60% of the members that are pushing this through, and a lot of people aren't even members of the union that end up losing jobs when the factories close down.
And that's a shame. That is a shame.
I think that is a problem because we have a factory here, the Nissan plant, and they're pushing to put a union in and the Nissan is pushing not to have a union in. And my dad actually is a truck driver, so he drives for he's not part of Nissan, but he's part of Star Transportation, but his route is, he's a dedicated driver for Nissan. So they were saying that would affect people in his case, like she's saying, people that's not even part of the union. So because if they bring in a union, whereas for he has a route with them, he would lose his route for the union workers. So like you said, I think it plays a part on both. Where I used to work for a union when I was with the government funded hospital, but going into a non-government, sometimes it does hurt and it doesn't, because I know that in place of it, they'll fight for you, but at some point there's a breakdown where you lose out when you don't pay your dues, or because some of them take it right out of your check, and others, you know, they want you to pay them to them and send the dues up, but is it a good or a bad thing in that preference? Do you bring one in, or do you lose your profits or your employees because you don't bring it in?
Yeah, well, I think if people look at the origins of collective bargaining and the beginnings of unionization, it happened at the time, late 1800s, early 1900s, where workers were being abused. And when I say abused, I mean beaten or fired willy-nilly or forced to sleep with the boss, all kinds of things, just rampant abuse. And the collective bargaining laws were put in place to protect union workers' pay and benefits and other things that management was bestowing and then withdrawing willy-nilly. So I think there are good reasons for unions to have started in the first place. Some people think, and I'll throw this question out to you to see if you agree or not, that unions have outlived their usefulness. What do you think?
In some point, I think they have.
I mean, most of the things, that circumstances that gave rise to collective bargaining are already outlawed in current laws and regulations. So those abuses can't happen anymore, or else, people go to jail right away.
I think when you have, like, I worked for an organization that wouldn't listen to its employees, and unfortunately, because they didn't listen, they wanted the union in because, they weren't, we do a lot of talking about including them to build morale and stuff like that. But when the morale is so low that you feel you're not being heard and management doesn't care, I think that's when they are kind of useful. It kind of gets the attention of management, like, hey, we're doing something wrong.
I think it depends on the business, I'll be honest. I worked for UPS, which is Teamsters, and I worked on both sides. So I was a Teamster for a while, and then I became a leader. And I've worked in organizations that aren't union. I will say I think there's a place for them, but not in every organization. And I believe that team members lose something. For example, in the organization that I'm in currently, we are not union. And we can have more one-on-one time with our employees. I think it has to do with the culture of your business. So if you have a solid culture in your business, I don't think there's a need for a union. But the trucking industry, and specifically the Teamsters, the culture is very hard and very crass, and I think there is probably a need for the union, and the Teamsters, I believe, have a place. Some cultures and some businesses could not handle a union. So if a union was put in my current business, where the culture is really good, I don't think it would be good for the business as a whole. I think the business would suffer for it.
I agree. My husband works for Sanderson Farms. So it's kind of, he works for a warehouse type of setting, and I think in those settings that a union is in a need, because like how he works now, some of the things without them having a union, the things that I hear that he said going on, as far as like he was saying that if they work over 40 hours, they pay them straight out, which I told him that's against the law. OSHA, right? OSHA can come in and just, he was like, well, they had a employee that went and got a lawyer and he got back pay because he saved all his check stubs and so on. But in the end, that person was, you know, they be scared because of what's going to happen if they do stand up and say something. Because he said that employee was let go a couple months after that, even though he felt like that everybody was trying to figure out was he let go because he said something or, you know, point. So in warehouse settings, I agree with Cindy, like, you need that union in those settings, but like for what I work for now, I don't think a union would have any benefit for us because I negotiate my own pay. I have that one-on-one time to go in and say, you know, it's time for my annual, and I think my work is speaking for itself, so I deserve more. And with our culture, that gives me the opportunity to get more when they say, you know, with the union, it kind of, sometimes you get it or sometimes you don't. But I think it does depend on the setting.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's other avenues that you can take as opposed to a union. So I think there's in some cases, if somebody was fired for saying something or not saying something, a union wouldn't necessarily benefit there. Maybe there's other legal avenues they can take aside from the union.
Right.
Well, I think they're more political than anything. The collective bargaining agreement for the NFL is awful. I think, you know, if you look back, you'll see how these lawyers are suing the NFL. They get all of these millions of dollars that they win, and the players get nothing out of it. I mean, that the fees, the attorney fees get paid, but the players end up benefiting nothing off of these lawsuits, and that's through collective bargaining agreement. And we let the heads of the union take over and say, okay, we're going to hire these lawyers. You need to sign up with them. And then we're supposed to get the X amount while the lawyers get this, and in the end we get nothing. I think it stays political. It's going to always be political. It's not what they can do for us, is what they do for themselves. So I don't see the use for a union at all, and I am a member.
Sir, but as far as whether or not they've outlived their usefulness, I think really the marketing conditions is really what the determiner there, because as you mentioned, historically there were some just horrible abuses, and that's because people were essentially just cogs in the machine, called the Industrial Revolution or whatnot. And so life was cheap and whatnot, and clearly that is not the case anymore. And I guess you could say they've outlived their usefulness. At the same time, there's a little bit in me when I see these sort of corporate behemoths like Amazon and whatever taking over the world. taking over a significant portion. I could kind of see where maybe that could happen again. So I'm not sure. I think maybe the usefulness has waned. We see a lot more public sector union stuff
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And I will say that the lady I bought my house from was a teacher in Berkeley Lake, Georgia, which is not like, I don't know, it's a pretty conservative little suburb. And she never changed her, she never told the NEA where to stop sending her magazine. So anytime I start thinking good about unions, I just read that magazine from the NEA, and it reads like an annex to Karl Marx's Das Kapital. I'll just say that.
Yeah, the NEA is highly politicized in terms of elective politics.
Yes.
But, I mean, they're working on what they perceive to be the benefit of their membership. They also...
Not the benefit of the kids, the benefit of the membership. That's right.
Yes,
Very well
yes,
put.
yes. Which, you know, they kind of wrap themselves in the American flag, you know, National Education Association and all that. But they're a union, and their duty is to their membership, not to the children.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, well,
But I grew up in Illinois, and unions have created a lot of problems, but my father ran a union shop for years, and they did protect people. They did protect people.
well, I'm glad to have this discussion. Very glad. Hope you got something out of it too. But I do want to move on, jealous of our time here. We got about 17 minutes left. So other week 4 objectives is to analyze the role of strategy on structure. And I put the example that I included in the course materials of J.C. Penney and the hiring of former CEO Ron Johnson from Apple. And it's a very, very interesting case of reorganization that Ron Johnson undertook. And I'm just curious, how many of you are shoppers past or present at J.C. Penney? Anybody?
Passed.
Okay,
Ours went out. Ours closed down.
which is a shame, but they're online.
Fast.
Past? Okay.
Fast.
Yeah. Our mall closed down.
I've been a pretty strong shopper at J.C. Penney's, as has my wife, since the 70s. And so I was aghast when I saw what happened in about 2012 when the J.C. Penney logo was dumped for something kind of Apple-like. If you look at it, it's got lots of white, it's square. Let's see if I can bring it up. No, I don't want to bring it up, I'm sorry. Because it's in my photo selection and I can't show you all my family photos. So in any case, well, I guess I can. Let me see if I can bring this up because I'm just going to turn off my desktop for a minute. Let's see if I can do that. No, it's just asking me if I can share it. Are you still seeing my desktop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just say stop sharing. There you go.
I'm trying to unshare it, but I'm not
Right.
seeing the link that allows me to
It's at the
unshare.
bottom. Stop sharing.
Oh, where?
Click on it. Put your hover over that again. It's the very last one. No. There. Very bottom. Stop sharing.
I'm not seeing stop sharing. I'm seeing show stage, manage content.
Okay. All right. Mine's different then. Okay. I'm sorry.
Doggone it. In any case, if you have seen the new J.C. Penney's logo, it's very Apple-esque. And when I say Apple, I mean Apple Incorporated, Steve Jobs, iPhones. It's got a lot of white. It's square, and that's where Johnson came from, of course. And in looking at what Johnson did, I make the case, and it's open for discussion. I make the case that he tried to make Penney's in Apple's image in a lot of ways. And let me explain what I mean by that. Not just the logo, but he changed the price point strategy for merchandise from, big sales and doorbusters and all that stuff that we're used to a more Apple-like pricing strategy of here's an item and here's the cost. Buy it or don't buy it. That was very different and a shock, I think, to a lot of people, including me. More than that, he refused to take the steps necessary to understand his customer base. If you look at Apple, and if you've done much studying about Apple, and you're going to get your chance in week 5, by the way, I've got a couple of things about Steve Jobs. Oh, you have the logo, that square logo.
Is it the red, white, and blue one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It changed.
Yeah, that's hideous.
Yeah. But it's Apple-like I say. In any case,
Minimalist.
Johnson did not take the steps necessary to understand his customers. That the main customers of Apple, I make the case, are men. Yes, of course, women buy Apple products. That's not my point. My point is that they appeal largely to things that are kind of male. And by that I mean, you get it when a guy sees something, like if anybody saw the picture of my 442, did anybody see the picture of my car? I posted it a couple of times on different links. Well, I'm not gonna go to that one either, and I'm sorry, Cindy, you won't be able to bring it up. But when a guy sees something, and I'm not trying to be overly sexist, maybe just a little bit. We tend to want it, and if that's the price it is, whatever it is, we say, okay, that's what it is, I'll buy it, or I won't buy it. And women are much different in terms of shopping. Not trying to be sexist, this is what I know after 38 years of marriage. Women are cutthroat when it comes to bargains. Women want sales. And women are the vast majority of customers at JCPenney. So in making Penny's Apple-like, Johnson ignored his main customers. No wonder he flopped. You can't do things like that and alienate your customers. And I think I made that case to James as it relates to football and the kneeling people, alienating some of the fans. And I'm one of them. I'm not trying to get into politics. I'm talking about customers, knowing your customers and pleasing your customers. When you organize, and that was, however it went down as far as strategy for Johnson to change Penny's to something more Apple-like. When you organize or reorganize, you better be understanding your customers. Because if you're not, you're going to flop. That's my.
I think that's why I only go now when I got my coupons, because I am an avid couponer. So, and I still coupon at JCPenney, but it's every blue moon because they do the good sales, and I can get me a good purse for about $15, $20. That's $100. But I think they did lose a lot of customers because I stopped shopping there myself.
Who took their place? To you? Where do you?
To me?
Yeah. Where do you shop for the stuff that you?
Belts.
Excuse me?
Belts.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
Belts.
Belts?
Yeah, BELKS, Belts.
Belts, I'm sorry, it's not a company with which I'm familiar. In my area,
They're
it's
common in the South.
okay. In my area, and in fact, when I was in California as well, we go to Kohl's, KOH.
We have one of those, but more people shop at the TJ Maxx than Kohl's.
Oh, okay. But they heavily coupon. They have lots of buyer incentives and so forth.
Bonus box.
And they are constantly updating their stores, the physical plant. They have, they put in different arrangements and decorations and stuff. And Penny's can't afford to do that anymore. You go into Penny's, if you can find one, the carpets are probably frayed and dirty because they don't have money. They don't have it to make their store better and attractive.
The one that we have left is one they just built about a year and a half ago. So it's brand new, but they don't see, it's the only one for about 60 or 70 miles.
Wow. So
I think that's why they kind of still get money, because I go during when the seasons change, because a lot of they summer things go to $1 or $2 when it's winter time, and then when it's wintertime, you wait to the end of winter and get back the winter stuff. So I think that's the only reason why the one we have here is still blooming a little bit.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense.
It's a marketing issue, but Kohl's, I mean, their marketing aspect is genius. I had two ex-wives that when they got those bonus bucks, my God, they had to go shopping because we got the bonus bucks.
It's the same thing with Walgreens and CVS. When I get the bonus bucks, I gotta go. I need mine, but I do. You do have to understand your customers, because I think even Dollar General in our area, there are plenty of Dollar Generals popping up. And that's on the thing because they're doing a new couponing thing. You can do the digital coupons, you can bring the paper coupons in. So a lot of their customers are couponers. But now you will see Family Dollar, they're trying to go to coupons digitally and so on. And they're trying to, like you were talking about Food Lion. Food Lion has done a lot better with their couponers because...
Oh, darn it. We lost her feed. She was in the middle of the thought. Well, she'll come back hopefully. So if I'm all wet about Apple and pennies, just forgive me. But that's my pet theory about it.
It's probably in our rating server. How long did that CEO last? Was it like 2-3 years?
2 years, which is extraordinarily short. They paid the guy a fortune. You know, he was commuting from the Silicon Valley to Dallas via corporate jet. Yeah. Hello, McFly.
That's not understanding your customer either. So, in your view, are they in a death spiral?
Yes, and I'm very sad to see it. Sears as well, and they didn't hire Ron Johnson, but Sears is they've lost their edge. Do you know Sears used to be the largest retailer in the world?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't sell groceries like Walmart to get there. But yeah,
Sears catalog.
I'm very sorry to see him go. Yeah, the catalogs are long gone. Wards, Montgomery Wards, I was a big Wards shopper for years. They're gone. It's sad, but that's the new reality. Online is really driving a lot of things. How many are members of Amazon Prime? Ding, ding, ding.
Wow. Yeah. That proves my point. They're taking over the world.
Okay, all of us are stabbing Sears in the heart by doing that.
Free shipping.
Not really. I mean, it is what it is. Kind of sad.
No, the free shipping is incredible. Plus, you get to watch Britannia and all those other things. Hey, I'm just saying, as an Atlantan, I'm not an Atlantan, but HQ2 for Amazon is going to be here.
Cool.
Saying that, right?
If that works out, that's great. I wish you well in that. You know, it's going to be somewhere. Okay.
When did they bring that?
Amazon's a movie company.
When did they bring that that virtual store in?
Oh, you mean Whole Foods?
Austin, Texas.
When did they bring that store in?
Grocery store?
The Flash and Go or whatever, where you walk in the store and where you go in and you just use your phone and walk straight.
Yeah, there's only 3 cities right now that have
I
it.
actually
Austin,
had a
Texas,
chance
and 2 others.
Stand at the door. They wouldn't let us in.
Wow.
Seattle is one. And they walk in with their phone, they go and get what they want, and walk straight out the store. And it's like, my daughter said, now you could go to jail because you don't have what I have, the credentials. You know, I was like, it was a joke for her. But I was like, what did you just do? And she explained to me how it worked. And I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Well, I want to move on because we're getting close to time, and I want to talk about the week 4 assignment and give you all a chance to ask for any questions or clarifications. You've seen my posting, I hope, about all the elements that are necessary for this assignment. And there are a bunch of them. You know, it's not just a paper. It's not just a PowerPoint. It's 4 or 5 different things, including a budget and a flow chart and so forth. So, questions? Concerns? Why are you doing this to me, Ron?
I have a concern about the video.
Yeah.
I'm
Why are you
techno
smiling,
challenged.
Will?
I'm not like Will. Um, fabulous job he did. But so I'm kind of playing with my video. I've got a video, I haven't got sound. And then how do we get it to you when we download it? Is that compatible?
I've had students who have taken video and loaded it into their PowerPoint presentation. That seemed to work pretty good, but if you try to just upload it to the assignment link, you may run into problems because videos are large files and the assignment link has a file size limit. So in desperation, I've done what I shouldn't do, which is accept videos via email. But I see people trying out there. But loading it into PowerPoint seemed to work pretty good for those who have tried it.
And there's not a specific requirement on format. You can take an MP4, a MOV file. You can take a lot of different things, right?
As long as I can play it, and I've got a lot of stuff that will enable me to play it.
VLC, it'll play anything.
Okay, so does it need to be the full 2 minute long, like stated?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't hear Mel.
Need the 2 minute long.
Oh, 2 minutes? Well, if it's 1 minute and 30 seconds, I'm probably not going to say anything. If it's 10 minutes, I'm going to wonder why.
No, I don't want it that long. I don't want it that long.
Why?
I just was wondering.
I don't No, if it's not exactly 2 minutes long, don't worry about it. Rest of you guys good with it? When you're
I
done,
think it'll be fun. It's different.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully you'll be happy with the results. What I've seen is very few cases of students who just couldn't get it together. The video aside, sometimes that is difficult, and like I say, I've accepted some via email. So if you got to do it that way, I will accept it. Just let me know. But yeah, please do try to submit it through the normal avenues, either in PowerPoint or directly to the assignment link.
Understood.
Okay.
We can all do video because everybody is here is on screen. So.
All right, well, we're close to time. Anything else for the good of the order? No.
I love
I
this
just want to
class.
say that with this video that we do here, sorry, Joe. I hope they keep it going because I've been 16 months in a program and it's nice to have this interaction in the discussions that we have and be able to ask questions and clarify assignments, even though, there's not a lot of participants tonight. It may be techno challenges. So I hope they do keep this for other students in the future because you can have a little more discussion about a topic versus following the feeds in a written form.
Totally concur.
I agree.
I'm with that.
And really, this technology is something our kids have been doing for a while, and for virtual offices and people with distributed sales forces, I mean, we should be able to do this without freaking out over, I don't know how to work this. So.
And I'm crazy about Skype for business. There are better platforms, I think, but it may be that whatever reason, this is part of everyone's apps that they can get through the UOP system through the email box. So maybe that's why. Mel?
I was about to say, Mr. Baker, I must say I have understood this class much better since we've been doing the participate. Just hearing the live sessions and the questions and the talk has helped me get through the assignments much better. And I've been with Phoenix for 5 years.
Wow.
Undergraduate with them, and this is the first time that I've ever done a live session out of 5 years, and it really, I can't even express to you how happy I was with this.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that from you, Mel. It helps me get connected with you guys, and all of you are regulars. I think almost everyone has been here through all 3 live sessions that I've done, and it helps me get to know what your needs are. So yeah, success all around. That's great. And we're going to continue. If it happens in future courses, there'll probably be a longer term look at it. But you can suggest it to your instructor as you go through the program. For some of you, this is your last class. That won't do you any good, but yeah. Yeah. But in any case, yeah, I really like it. I like it a lot. So, and I get to wear my cool shirts. So,
Yeah.
all right, guys.
Why not? Maybe not from pennies.
No. All right, you guys. Well, I bid you all a good evening. Thanks again for attending, and I will post my questions tomorrow without fail.
All right. Good night.
Have a good night.
All right,
Good
thank you.
weekend. Have a good weekend.
You too, James. Take care.